Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast, episode 125.
Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast with your host, Jack Mountain Bushcraft School founder and Master Main Guide, Tim Smith.
I'm your host, Tim Smith. I'm a registered Master Main Guide and have been a full-time outdoor instructor and guide since founding the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School in 1999. We help people become more skilled, more knowledgeable, more experienced, and more confident in the natural world through our bushcraft and guide training semester programs and multi-week canoe and snowshoe expeditions. You can check out the show notes to all of our podcasts at blog.jackmtn.com. If you're interested in learning more about our college-accredited and GI Bill-approved programs, visit the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School on the web at jackmtn.com. And check out our online network and digital learning academy at bushcraftschool.com. Hello and welcome back to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Smith. We're kicking it old school again today, sitting in the guide shack, and we are under a heat dome. And if you don't know what a heat dome is, it's very hot bunch of air that's domed over us right now. It's not like a clever name for something that it isn't. Heat wave, and been sweating and feeding bugs for a couple of days. We're in the middle of week 1 of the summer 2024 Wilderness Bushcraft semester, and we've had no rest. I think it was an old 80s heavy metal album name that was like No Rest for the Wicked. I don't know if it was like a Black Sabbath thing or something. I can't recall. But there's been no rest for the wicked around here. Well, we just wrapped up the Wilderness Canoe Expedition semester a couple of weeks ago, and then I had a couple of days off, and then we loaded up the tater raising van. If you've been watching any of our videos, we've got a couple of our Bonaventure Canoe Expedition videos up already. So we loaded up the van and headed 5 hours northeast up on the Gaspé Peninsula in Quebec, and met a couple of friends there and ran the Bonaventure River. So today we're going to talk about that. I'm going to introduce you to Jesse Grindler, who ran the river with us and is Jack Mountain alumni and journeyman certificate holder, and doing a lot of other interesting things that you'll hear about in a bit. But first, welcome, Jesse.
Hello, how's it going, Tim?
It's going good. I'm sweaty and itchy and bug bitten.
That's how it goes in northern Maine in the summertime.
Looking forward to winter. What they say about Maine is if you're not cold, you're itchy. It could be for a variety of reasons, but now it's bugs mostly. So you've been here all week, and we spent last week together on the river up there. So let's talk about that river trip. What a beautiful stretch of water. It was your first time coming down there, right?
Yeah, I've done like a day paddle on the lower Bonnie in the past, but this was the first time doing the full river, and I think it's one of my favorite river trips ever. So beautiful.
Yeah.
Such a variety of different skills and types of water, from like 3-inch deep winding shallows until like constant white water. It was amazing.
Yeah, just a beautiful stretch of water. It was my third trip. I haven't made the time to go up there every year. It's just a scheduling thing. But every time I go up there, I kick myself and say, I want to do this every single year. It was fun, too. We had a great crew. One new person who isn't part of, or wasn't previously part of, like I don't want to say the Jack Mountain family because it sounds very weird, but who hadn't been here before, but everybody else had been through here, and a couple of former and future instructors, and we just had a blast. Like lots of really, really cheap laughs. I think most fun, when you go with friends, river trips like that, to me, that's the defining characteristic, like the shenanigans that go on once you wrap up the moving down the river for the day. And man, we had some fun. We also managed to see the greatest hits of Maine Guide Services when we were out. We saw...
Yeah, we ran into Lisa D. Hart, 3 minutes with a Maine Guide, right when we did at the put-in.
Yeah, all the who's who. So we ran into Lisa D. Hart. We saw the guys from Smoking Rivers. We saw Dave Connolly from Canoe the Wild. We saw Chip and Lonnie from Allagash Canoe Trip. So it really was like a who's who of Maine guiding out there. And it was funny, like, we didn't see anybody from Quebec.
Nope.
Everybody we saw was from Maine. So I made the joke that Governor Janet Mills is going to annex that river and make it part of Maine for for next year, and then we won't have all those pesky border things to go through. I guess we could just take off here in a float plane and land there, and it
sounds great.
Sounds great. Yeah, lots of fun. So Lisa Dehart, who we met on the river, I had met her previously, but is a bit of a celebrity around our camp. People think very highly of her. She's got a great YouTube channel called 3 Minutes with a Maine Guide. So if you're curious about a lot of the traditional Maine Guide skills, like canoeing, camping, campfire cooking, all those things, go to YouTube, type in 3 Minutes with a Maine Guide, and you will be pleasantly surprised / amazed at what the skill set and the video quality that this woman's putting out.
Yeah, she's incredible. We spent about 3 minutes with her, and it was, let me tell you, loved it.
And if that's what you're interested in, you like that sort of content, I'm actually releasing a new YouTube channel. It's going to debut next week. It's for, I think in the modern world, people are really busy and don't have a ton of time to devote to developing that skill set. So we're going to call this 2 Minutes with a Maine Guide featuring Tim Smith. So...
Yes.
For the busy outdoor professional
That's
who doesn't
right.
have 3 minutes. Highlights from the trip. So we started out and it was really low. My last trip down the Bonaventure was super, super low, and we never really got the rain. This trip, day one, coming in, putting in at the lake, and then that upper river, super, super low. We did a lot of grinding out, a lot of walking. This time we had five solos in a tandem. And the folks in the tandem, there's just not enough water to float you on that upper river. But thankfully we got there that first night and it kind of rained overnight. It just poured and the water level came up, and then we had just about perfect water the rest of the way down. When we got to the lower river, it was just kind of sitting there ruddering. And I was spoiled. My very first trip down the Bonaventure was a solo trip, and there was a lot of water. So I did it, 127 kilometers. 85 miles or so, 87 miles. And I did it in 3 days, 2 nights. Obviously, if you're by yourself, you get up in the morning, you eat something quick, and then you get in the boat and you're covering miles. You're not kind of farting around in camp. But that maybe tainted my understanding of the river, because the last trip 6 nights, this trip 5 nights, because the water was significantly lower. So there's that old thing about a man never steps into the same river twice, because the man is different and the river is different. But every time I've been up there, this river's been a little bit different. So obviously with high water, you can just kind of bomb down and go super fast. Not in the technical sections, obviously, and then the lower water, everything becomes much, much more technical. Maybe there's only one way through a section of water. And, we had it all on this trip. And trips like that, like, what a blessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I was paddling in the tandem boat, and the upper section was definitely a challenge, poling with a passenger and gear. But we loaded a bunch of our gear into some of the solo boats, so that kind of lightened our load. And yeah, we were able to flow through, and that rain really helped us to stop grounding out on the rocks. Super, super helpful.
Things that jump out at me from this trip, if you're ever considering going up there, number one, just the nature in that part of the world is just stunningly beautiful. If you don't believe me, click through to the homepage for this. If you're listening on an app, go to blog.jackmtn.com, and there you'll have access to the videos that we shot on the trip, and just look at some of the scenery and just the clearness of the water. It's not, I don't want to say it's like nothing you've ever seen before, but it's pretty rare in this day and age. Maybe like super high alpine rivers are that clear, like height of the Appalachians, like in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. But when they're that clear, they're nowhere near that big. Like, you can't run them in a boat. And this thing is like, the most crystal clear mountain stream you've ever seen, but big enough to run with a boat. And some of the photos we have, like near the bottom of the river where it hits the salt water, it's just a massive river, but still so crystal clear. It's just amazing, the nature and the scenery and going through the mountains, and it's gorgeous. So in addition to that, other things that jump out, the embocals. So an embocal is I think it's a French word.
Embac.
For log jam. And these things are there, they don't move. They just get bigger every year. and it takes a long time for the logs to break down. But this is where you got to get out of your boat, haul your stuff over these big log jams, and every step is just asking for a twisted or a broken ankle. So you're definitely 100% on your guard there. It's not relaxing by any stretch. It's not like paddling on the pond where you can kind of turn off your brain. Every sense is going all the time.
Those are kind of a polling masterclass. The ones that are not completely blocked, where you have to carry over, when it's just these tight S turns through like piles of logs, and every bend wants to pull you into a bunch of sharp sticks.
Yeah,
you gotta be on your game there with the snubbing.
Yeah, and I don't know. To be honest, I don't know how people do it with just a paddle, because this thing's steep, windy, and fast. So if I was trying to run that with just a paddle in a solo boat, like, you're gonna get swept into the logs. But with a pole, you can stop yourself, and I've always run it with a pole, the upper section anyway. It's weird when you look at it, the upper section, the first 35, 40 kilometers is all windy and S-turns and things, and this trip anyway, I tended to run that whole thing with a pole to the point where you're just exhausted because you're standing all day throwing your pole out and your shoulders are screaming. And then the lower section below the canyon, I think I poled, like, if there was a really twisty rapid, I would pole. But mostly on the bottom section was paddling, so we just sort of sat there and ruddered all day, which was great fun. So things that jump out, again, to recap, the nature, the embocals, the canyon. The canyon's pretty, it's not like super technical whitewater, but I think the danger and the real challenge comes from how remote you are. Like, if something bad happens there, there's no road, there's no easy way to get out. You're in the middle of nowhere. So much so, at the campsite we stayed at in the middle of the canyon, there's an old boat that somebody punched a hole in and they just left it there. So I'd be curious, I'd love to hear the story about the rest of their trip, trying to throw their extra people and gear into other people's boats and how challenging it was to get down to a road access point. But
yeah, I think the section before that amazing campsite, there's about 12, 13 kilometers of just consistent whitewater where you don't get a single break. It's all class 1, easy class 2 for the most part, but you have to be completely present or else you're gonna get hung up on a rock for sure.
Yeah, a couple of class 3 ledges in there, I think.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So, I think we get spoiled on some rivers where it's a drop and then a pool and a drop and a pool. So when you get those long stretches, like, the river isn't giving you an obvious spot to take a break. You have to pick one and say, I'm going to eddy out here, or I'm going to, use the setting pole and set into an eddy and take a break. And I remember that day we were coming down there, and like, because you have to be 100% aware of everything around you. Like, there's no mental break, and that totally stands out for me because it's exhausting. I imagine that's probably what it's like to be like an air traffic controller, where you can't look behind you. I remember one of the guys on the trip, Jason, said he looked behind him for 1 second and he hit a rock and got hung up. And it happens that fast. You're maneuvering around that much stuff, so there's really no mental break. And I remember that day, I was like, okay, guys, I've got to stop for lunch now because my brain needs a break. Like, body's fine, but having that focused concentration for that long a period of time, I don't know how long we were on that section, like a couple hours of no mental breaks. Man, it's just exhausting. So that stands out at me as well. Like, the no mental break bit, I think we're kind of spoiled in the modern world, and maybe we've always been spoiled, but in my day-to-day life, I can always, if I get flustered, I can take a breath, take like a minute and just, close my eyes and take a deep breath and get that little mental break, and kind of gives you what you need to go after the next challenge in your path. But when you're on those rivers, those long rapids, man, there's nothing you can do except pull over. And then if I would pull over, somebody would have been way ahead or somebody'd be way behind. And you as a guide, I always say you want eyes on everybody in your party all the time. So when you don't have that, then you work like crazy to get that back. So that adds another level of difficulty to the lack of mental relaxation on that section. But ultimately, we know that challenge makes us better. If you're not pushing your boundaries at all, if you're not working hard and maybe going a little bit to the edge of the envelope of where you're comfortable, then you stagnate. So I know watching everybody on this trip, everybody got better. Everybody got more efficient, better able to manage the rapids, better at poling, better at paddling. I think we really came together as a group. And for me, that's the fun part. That's the special sauce of like the Jack Mountain experience. And that's the special sauce of doing remote expeditions, is a small group of people coming together and working as a team towards a common goal. I think that's like what's defined us as a species. And I absolutely just love being a part of something like that. That's why I guess I continue to do it.
And on a trip like this, I think just what you're saying is so amazing. Like, you can read books about whitewater technique and camping. You can take classes, but when you're actually doing it and putting everything into practice in the moment, and it's your kind of your unconscious mind that is reading the river while you're doing paddle strokes, and you're no longer thinking about what is this stroke called? Is it a draw or a pry? But you're just flowing and maybe going against the current, with the current, around the rocks in a flow state that, that's when you really integrate everything that you've learned.
It was awesome. If you want to learn these things, you can check out my new YouTube channel called 2 Minutes with a Main Guide. Debuting next week.
That's right.
Lisa, if you ever hear this, I'm just kidding. But it's a pretty good joke, though, you got to admit. And something unique that you get to do on this trip, that people did on this trip, was we put in at the very top of the drainage, right? This lake right nestled in a little bowl of the mountains up at the top of the hill in the Cheechocks Mountains. And you get to paddle all the way and take out in the salt water. And not often you get to do that. And especially not often you get to do that where even the bottom of the river is beautiful. I mean, you could probably do that if you wanted to paddle through some big industrial wasteland in Port City, but where even, within a quarter mile of the ocean, it's still beautiful, crystal clear water. And, what a treat.
Yeah, it was pretty special turning one of those last bends and getting this huge whiff of the salty water, it's a salty air by the sea.
Yeah, not too many places left you can do stuff like that, at least in this part of the world. So anyway, it was an awesome trip. We had a blast. If you're interested in going, you shouldn't go if you're a novice. If you do, you can do it, but you should go with one of those main guide services that we recommend that run it as a guided trip. When we go, it's usually a friend's trip, although we've been discussing that because you're not a resident of Maine.
I am not.
Where are you a resident of?
I'm a resident of Montreal, Quebec.
So Montreal, Quebec. So perhaps you may be guiding this as a commercial trip.
Yes, I'm considering it.
Well, you should check the website, and we'll have links to Jesse's website and everything on the show notes. But yeah, it's really, in this part of the world, like, I don't know that there's anything else that combines the beauty of the water, the challenging of the whitewater, and the remoteness. Yeah, it's a pretty unique trip.
Absolutely.
So, okay, we've covered that. Bonaventure River equals fun canoe trip. Tell me, so just to get our audience kind of familiar with you, you were out here a couple of years ago for a semester course. You weren't new to this sort of skills / lifestyle / teaching at that point. But since then, you've launched a business, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So I did my semester and journeyman certification back in 2022. And then just this year, I launched my business, Wise Oak Wilderness.
Wise Oak Wilderness. Why oak?
So the oak is one of my favorite trees. It really inspires me as a tree. It provides so much food. The wood is incredible, and it's kind of been a symbol of nature's sustenance for cultures all around the world. Oaks grow in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, and the acorn is kind of this forgotten food that I am inspired to bring back. So I give a lot of foraging classes, and I think that my class on tree foods and nuts and acorns specifically is one of my favorite classes to teach.
Nice. So you're running, is it mostly on the island of Montreal where you're running programs?
Yeah, so I do a little bit in the city and a lot just about half an hour outside of the city on the Kahnawake Reserve. So the community of the Mohawk people are Kanien'kehá:ka, over at a friend's place there.
For those of you listening, I'm not even going to bother trying to spell that. Like, no way. No way. I'm going to call it Community X or something.
There you go.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I think I've shared this with you, but my brother and his wife live on the island of Montreal. They're not currently there now. They did a stint where they're working in the Canary Islands for 6 or 7 years, but they'll be back. So I have a lot of kinfolk in that region.
Nice. Come on up. Come on up.
And I have known by many names throughout the world, but when I do travel to rural parts of Quebec, they know me as La Petite Fleur de Sauvage, the tiny delicate wildflower. So
I have heard people whisper that name in the streets of Montreal.
Yeah. In the underground too.
Yeah, definitely. Red light district. Everyone's talking about Tim.
Yeah. But I go by my code name. Yeah, La Petite Fleur de Sauvage.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Jesse's out here this fall, working on his Journeyman Level 2 certification. We used to just call this a teaching assistant position, but what we do for people that take their work here seriously and get the Journeyman certification, we offer them the ability to come back and really kind of dial in their teaching prowess, their course planning. We do some small business marketing, talking about how to get the word out, doing things like this podcast here. But that's what we've been working on this week, and we're just excited to have you here. It's kind of fun so far. Lots of cheap laughs, as you can imagine. But it's been ridiculously hot, so we're struggling with that. Apparently, the heat wave breaks today, and I think when we opened up the guide shack, we opened up the guide shack this morning, and it was like 7,000 degrees in here. But I'm feeling a breeze. Doesn't feel bad.
Yeah.
Violently sweating because I'm on coffee number 3, but feeling a breeze.
Coffee sweats. Yeah, it's good to be back here and to kind of revisit a lot of the content that I learned and covered on my course when I was here, and seeing things through the student's perspective again, and considering, okay, how can I help them learn this when, maybe they've never swung an axe, maybe they've never taken the time to identify a plant. And I love returning to that kind of beginner's mind and seeing their excitement where someone's like, oh, I never realized how fun it would be to press plants. And it's almost like I consider a lot of modern people to be kind of illiterate with that nature stuff.
100%.
And so we're teaching them the ABCs of, okay, this is a dandelion. And sometimes it's still amazing to me that there are people that don't know what a dandelion is.
I think mostly because anybody listening to this likely has a dandelion within 50 yards of where you're sitting.
Totally.
Unless you're in the middle of downtown New York City. These things are everywhere. But it's like this backdrop that no one's ever paid attention to. But then when you open your eyes and you start to see it, and there's that thing with plants. When you learn a new plant, like an edible or a medicinal, something you're going to use, once you learn a new one, all of a sudden you see it everywhere. I remember way back in the day learning mullein for hand-drill stalks. And once I learned it and started using it, it was literally I couldn't go 5 minutes without seeing it.
That was one of the first plants I learned was mullein back when I was a teenager.
And it's such a weird, I don't know if it's a psychological thing, but once you learn that new thing, all of a sudden it's everywhere.
Yeah, so we've been having a fun time doing some foraging here as well. There's basically all of the edible parts of cattail that are happening right now, getting cattail pollen, shoots, inner cores, flower spikes. I got a bunch of milkweed flowers yesterday.
Where'd you get those? Top of the hill?
Kind of along the highway. There's a good spot there.
Go up and turn right?
Yeah.
That field's loaded with milkweed. Great. So tell us, you started your business when? I knew you mentioned
February this year.
February of this year, and how are things going with it?
Going good, actually. Yeah, courses have been running and filling up, so there's a demand for it.
Great. And are you running, tell us a little bit about, I know you mentioned you do foraging courses, but tell our audience a little bit about some of the other things you do. I'm sure we probably have one listener in Quebec at least.
Yeah, hopefully.
I mean, in addition to the 2 other listeners that we have, my mom and her neighbor.
Yeah.
We maybe have a third.
I think that's my mom. Yeah. So I'm doing a couple of different courses. So one of my focuses is on foraging and outdoor cooking. So that course is called Forest Feast. It's something I've done for about 5 seasons. I've done the course a bunch of times, and every time it's been super fun. And this fall, I'm starting up a more bushcraft-focused course as well called Firekeepers, where we're going to make a bunch of our own gear and then take it on an early winter expedition.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then I'm working on developing some more tripping programs as well. So I want to start running some trips in the upper Ottawa River Valley. So on the Noir River, we're going to be guiding a trip in a couple of weeks. I'm thinking about the Bonaventure River in the future. I'm going to be doing some winter guiding and developing a course with the Néo-Anciens, who are based kind of close to Kamouraska in Quebec, and we're thinking of doing a course where...
That's the guy who does the snowshoes.
Yeah. So he's a really talented traditional snowshoe weaver. So we're going to do a course together where we're going to have 3 days of weaving snowshoes, and then we're going to take them out on the winter trail and do some winter skills.
Awesome. Yeah, that all sounds great.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to explore the rivers of the upper Ottawa Valley. Never been. Went to La Vérendrye once, long time ago. It's just, when I was living in New Hampshire, now being this far east in Maine, it's a long way to get out there, but I still want to go. The rivers that we have in this part of the world, the Bonaventure is very similar to a lot of our local rivers in Maine in that it just sort of dries up in the summer. So it's very difficult to be on these rivers without poling a canoe. And that's why poling turned into such an art form in this part of the world. But I'd like to go paddle some of these deeper rivers that I've never been on, where it's like, you always have consistent water. Maybe you keep the pole stashed and you just paddle. We get that here 1st of May, but after that, it's like, grab the pole, because it seems like every year, hey, look, it's another drought, it's another low water thing. So,
yeah, they're pretty amazing. It's a different style of river, like you're saying. We have the Three Sisters out there, the Du Moine, the Black River and Noir River, and the Coulanges. And they're all similar, but they've got this amazing like pool and drop. So it's a different style of river running where you're getting out of boats, scouting the whole section of whitewater, finding those lines, and then you've got a nice pool in the end. So if you do end up dumping and swimming through, then you're not just getting washed downstream indefinitely. So they're really good rivers for people that are kind of new to whitewater to learn on.
And listeners out there in podcast land, you know how it works. If nobody has video of you dumping the boat and swimming, it didn't happen.
No.
Yeah, that all sounds great. So we'll include links to your website in the show notes here. What else? I guess we probably got to get ready to go. We're starting off the day today making ropes with everybody on the Wilderness Bushcraft semester. We got to talk about the weather and what it's doing and doing some more foraging. The challenge from the instructor's side of you when you get really difficult weather conditions, like a super cold snap in the winter or just this super oppressive heat wave that we're under right now, is keeping everybody interested and motivated and safe. I should add that. Like a couple of years ago, we were out here for a winter course, and with the wind chill, it was 60 below zero for like a day and a half.
God.
It's like, well, what are we going to do? Like, so you just want to make sure that people aren't dying on you.
I was really impressed with the students yesterday. I think 3 people built their first bow drill set and got their first coal.
Yeah.
Yesterday, and it was so hot outside, so they're a very motivated group, and I'm hoping to see a bunch of them go for and get their journeyman certifications.
Yeah, me too. It's such a great thing to get. Although if you're a student of bow drills, you should know that for every 10 degrees centigrade, the temperature increases, chemical reactions double in speed. So maybe when it's warmer out, we're more likely to. So if it has, let's pick a round number and say it has to get to 700 degrees Fahrenheit for the coal to form. It's so hot out now, we're just that much closer. So, there's less temperature you need to go through to get up there. Not really. I'm kind of making it up. I've had lots of coffee this morning. I'm sweating violently.
Yeah. Plausibly explained and confidently delivered.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Well, you've wasted probably a half hour of your life listening to this. We appreciate it. But you should probably make better life choices in the future.
Yeah, listen to a good podcast like Radiolab or This American Life. They're
Yeah,
very
or
good.
go to YouTube and watch 3 Minutes with a Maine Guide.
Oh yeah, do that.
And because next week, if you're too busy for that, again, next week we're going to debut 2 Minutes with a Maine Guide. And we could even in the future, if people are real busy, come up with something called 1 Minute with a Maine Guide.
30 seconds with a main guide.
Yeah, Christ, 25 seconds with a Maine Guide.
But it'll cost you.
Thank you for listening. Hope you have a great day. You have been listening to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. For more information on our professional wilderness guide training programs that are college accredited and GI Bill approved, visit us on the web at jackmtn.com.